Good morning. Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here today. I'm Sarah Beth from SarahBeth Yoga, and let's just get right to it. So if you are like me, you have come to yoga to... One second. If you're like me, you've come to yoga to relieve stress, tension, maybe anxiety. And in my case, a lot of that stemmed from unresolved trauma, stress, and hardship. So in this video, I'm going to share 3 techniques from my new book, Trauma Alchemy, how you can transform hardship, stress, and trauma into your best life through yoga. So if you stay till the end, I can tell you how to buy this book and the special book bonuses that come with it. I've also got a giveaway of 3 personalized signed copies of this book. So pay attention. Eliminate distractions, maybe take some notes. Now, before we get into it, just in case if you don't know me, I'm Sarah Beth from SarahBeth Yoga. I'm a wife, a mother, and a business owner. I run the YouTube channel SarahBeth Yoga with over 1.5 million subscribers, and I have a private membership in the SarahBeth Yoga app with thousands of members all around the world. And now I can add to that list a published author. The lessons that I'm going to share today are among many in this book that will help you to heal unresolved trauma and emotional pain, process past traumas or stresses or losses, grievances, hardships with a new perspective. You'll learn how to create a relationship with and reparent your inner child, and feel more compassion for yourself and others. You'll also gain a deeper understanding and appreciation of how you can do your inner work and heal through your yoga practice. So sit tight and let's get to it. The first lesson that I want to share with you, and this is kind of the foundation of all of it, comes from chapter 2 in my book, and it is to ground down. And no doubt you've heard me talk about this before. Let me tell you how it relates to healing, trauma healing, and doing all that inner work. So in order to do your inner work, you first need to regulate your nervous system. You've probably heard that with children, when they're having a tantrum, that you cannot speak logic to them. Same with us. We're just oversized children. We're just big toddlers right now. And when we are in the middle of a tantrum, or when we're feeling triggered, or we're feeling upset, in order for us to get to a place of reason and logic, we need to learn how to calm ourselves down. And we can do that through grounding. And you've probably practiced it many times before, which means you've got the muscle memory and you have it within you. But let me just refresh you. The first thing you want to do when it comes to grounding down is you want to physically ground your body down. So instead of like sitting in whatever, kind of weird way that you might be sitting or standing with your hips shift off to the side, think ground down and physically put both feet on the ground and make sure whatever is touching the ground, or if you're sitting down, even your bottom is touching your seat, which is touching the ground, everything's even. And you're pressing down and you're connecting with the ground beneath you. And you can even take that further and visualize yourself growing roots out through what's connecting with the ground and even going further into the earth beneath that ground. When you physically ground yourself down, you are physically placing yourself in the present moment. Just that right there can be so helpful. But I always recommend adding the second tool, which is breathe. I know you're breathing all the time. You're not even thinking about it and you're breathing, but I mean really breathe. Take those deep yogic belly breaths. And some of us, it can take a long time to learn how to use your diaphragm when you breathe, especially if you've been living in fight or flight for so long that you breathe in your upper chest area, like these shallow upper lung breaths. So practice deep belly breathing. And you can do that by placing one hand on your belly, one hand on your chest. And as you breathe, work to get that hand on your belly to move more than the hand on your chest. So even when I was teaching my 6-year-old how to do a belly breath, he was confused because he was breathing all up here. And so it took a while of just place your hands on your belly. When you inhale, your hands should rise, like as if there was a balloon under your hands expanding. And when you exhale, the hands should gently fall and contract. And it's not like you're forcing the air out. This is just a natural rhythm of your body. And when you are feeling stressed or triggered or upset, chances are you are up here, and there's a reason for that. It is your body serving you, saying it's time to fight, it's time to flight, it's time to take action. Except that there are no more bears or tigers, and you might not actually need to be in a place where you have to fight or flight. So this is the time where you can tell your body, it's safe, I'm safe. And you do that through your breath and controlling your breath. So work on your deep belly breath. Step 1 is to just ground yourself down. Step 2 is to turn on that deep, slow belly breath. So let's do it together. Hand on your belly. Take a long inhale through your nose. Feel your hands expand. Even long exhale through your nose. Even longer exhale through your nose. Feel your hands slowly contract. And again, in through your nose. And out through your nose. I do this kind of breathing very mindfully before I do something like this. When I know I'm going to be on camera or I know I need to show up somewhere, it helps to slow me down, ground me down so that I can talk to you from a place of calm versus a place of like hyperactivity like this, where I'm really stressed out and I'm anxious. So breathing can help you to calm down, ground down. And if you have children or if you have a partner that you feel really close with, something that you can do to help encourage each other to ground down, calm down, use those belly breaths is do something called a pressure hug, where you are hugging so closely that your bellies are pressing into each other. And then both of you through your nose, inhale, and your bellies will press in that pressure. Presses your bellies against each other. And then as you exhale, you can feel your bellies kind of relax. And it's a cool way to feel your partner, or for my son, this is a really great way to help him calm down. It's like my cues are helping him. And a lot of times people need a lot of different ways to learn how to do that. So that might be something to try too. Now, the third thing about grounding down is to recognize overstimulation. So I feel like this is a term that's just coming to surface lately, where people are like, oh my gosh, maybe I am overstimulated. I bet you might be at times. I mean, we spend so much time on our devices nowadays, and we're being fed ads so frequently and so subtly. And we're every single social media site now is going towards those short videos. And so we're getting accustomed to these like 15-second scrolls and these dopamine fixes. And before you know it, you're on this like doom scroll that's lasted for hours, and your brain has been rewired to want this like quick, except that all of that really quick action can lead to overstimulation. I mean, how much did you just take in over the last 30 minutes of scrolling or hour of scrolling? And not only that, not only our devices, but just in the world around us, are you experiencing overstimulation just by being in a really loud environment with a lot of people around you, and people are talking to you, but there's also a conversation over there, and the radio's on, and there's some TV on over there. And I mean, that's overstimulating. And so something you can do is just become aware of overstimulation and then support yourself. So how can you make your environment more supportive to avoid overstimulation? How can you recognize when you are overstimulated? How can you communicate with that you are overstimulated with the people in your life? So for me, I don't like having in my own home, I prefer to have just one noise on at a time. It's going to be the TV or it's going to be the music, but definitely not both. And sometimes that happens and I'm like, okay, that's what's happening, multiple noises, and that's overstimulating, and I'll go turn off one of those sounds. If someone's trying to have a conversation with me and we're right next to like an audio source that's playing music, I'll ask to move that conversation to another room, and I'll just be honest, like I'm having a really hard time focusing right now because I'm listening to two different things at once. I'm having a hard time tuning that out. Another thing you can do for overstimulation is wear earplugs. I bought these loop earplugs. You've probably seen the ads for them. If not, you probably will now. And they're little soft silicone earplugs that you put into your ears, and you can choose the different size that you remove the decibel noises of around you. I keep these in my purse at all times because you just never know when you're actually in that environment. Sometimes you can foresee it, sometimes you cannot. But I've used these earplugs at airports. I've used them at child's play centers. I've used them during child play dates. I've used them in my own home. It's a nice way to kind of take off the edge. So I definitely recommend looking into earplugs if you tend to get overstimulated easily. Okay, let's move on to our second lesson. And this one's from chapter 3 in my book. And this lesson is to change your patterns and you'll change your life. So in yoga, you've already learned that your body's tension and flexibility is likely a result of your patterns, right? The way that you hold or mold yourself all day can be felt on your mat and in your body. And it can be really uncomfortable to break those patterns. I mean, do you remember the first time that you stretched? Do you remember? Or the first time that you got back into stretching after you haven't done it in a while? It doesn't feel very good. A lot of people who are brand new to yoga are like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. Yeah, that's because you need to go outside of your comfort zone in order to grow. That first stretch, it shouldn't be pain, but it's definitely discomfort. The same thing happens when you break patterns in your life. You'll feel discomfort because it's uncomfortable and it's unfamiliar. But remind yourself, it's outside of your comfort zone that you grow. So just seeing patterns, just becoming aware of patterns is the first step, and it makes your patterns easier to break. But it takes more than awareness to break those patterns and to move outside of your comfort zone. In yoga, we use our warm-up, 6 spinal movements. You bend forward, bend back in your cat-cow, a little bit of twisting, a little bit of side bending. And that's how we warm up our body and begin to break patterns in our habits and our postures in order to move on to the more challenging postures and movements ahead. In trauma alchemy, your warm-up is to become aware of the patterns in your life and take basic actions. And by becoming aware of the patterns, I mean becoming aware of the patterns that no longer serve you. And guess what? One day in the past, someday long ago, they did serve you. So we don't need to shun and shame those patterns. They served us once, but maybe they no longer serve us anymore. So it's time to let them go. It's time to break free of those patterns and to take action and move ourselves away from that. But it is so much easier to sit in the discomfort because it's familiar than it is to move into a place or sit in the comfort because it's familiar. What am I trying? It's so much easier to sit into something that's no longer serving you because it is familiar to you. It's so much harder to break free from something that's no longer serving you because you're moving into that unfamiliar. So the best way to become aware of those kinds of patterns that no longer serve you is through self-reflection. And I like to practice self-reflection through journaling. You can also use regular therapy as a self-reflection exercise. If you're meeting with a therapist once a week, chances are you are reflecting back on that week. You're reflecting back on your patterns and your habits and your self-talk. And a therapist can be immensely helpful in recognizing those patterns, even maybe sometimes before you do. If you are journaling, this is the way that I like to journal. First, I like to write the date, and I journal at night. This is my reflective journaling is always at night. I'll write the date, and right next to the date, I write a smiley face, a meh face, or a frowny face. And That way I can just look back, I can like flip through my journal and I can see patterns of like, wow, I was doing really, really well during this time, or wow, I started slipping and I started not doing so well during this time. And then underneath that, you can start to write in a journal entry, and it doesn't have to be like, Dear Diary. It can be just like little statements. It can be your mood during the day or how your mood might have shifted during the day. It could be accomplishments, and definitely always write down your accomplishments and your celebrations. Celebrate your wins by putting them in your journal. Also write down if you notice that you got triggered by anything during the day. What could have caused that trigger? What did you feel immediately? What did you feel after? Were you able to do anything to calm and ground and come back to center? Did you learn anything from that? And you won't always learn something right away, but just write it down, because as you continue to do your self-reflection, as days turn into weeks, you will begin to notice patterns. You will begin to notice, wow, I'm writing this thing down again. How many times do I have to write this thing down before I finally change? I've done a lot of my own change and self-work just through these types of journaling exercises. So take note of what's working and what's not working as well when you're doing your journaling. If you are taking notes right now, I'll just review that one more time with you. Write your date, write your smiley face, meh face, or frowny face. Write down your mood, your triggers, your feelings, your self-talk, your celebrations. Notice patterns and write those down. Write down, if you do notice patterns, what action you want to take in order to break those patterns. What are the very basic steps you can take to break those patterns? And also take note of what is working and what isn't working, and be easy on yourself. Just because you wrote it down once doesn't mean life has changed and everything's wonderful. It takes effort and it takes practice, just like in your yoga practice. And also, this is where a therapist can come in handy, because sometimes our self-talk needs a little guidance. Sometimes a therapist can really be there to help support you and recognize where your self-talk might be hindering your growth, where you might be holding yourself back, and why. And so journaling and therapy, both of those are my secret weapons. And I really hope that if you take those on, that they can be your secret weapons too. Okay, let's get into number 3. In order to heal, you need to feel. And this is from chapter 9 in my book. Chapter 9 is it was a tough chapter to write, and it's an intense chapter to read. But it essentially gets into this concept of, in order to heal, you need to feel. So you've probably felt it in hip openers before. Half pigeon stuff starts to come up. And by stuff, I mean like negative emotions, feelings, things that don't necessarily feel good start to bubble up. Well, hip openers are a somatic way to release pent-up tension, especially emotional tension in your body. So that's a good thing. When you start to feel that stuff bubbling up, that's a good thing, as long as you let it move through you. So when you feel that stuff bubbling up and you're like, not today. Well, it's just going to fester. It's going to bubble up again. So this bubbling up of the feelings and the emotions is an opportunity for you to let it move through you, for you to work through it, for those feelings to eventually come to surface. And as they come to surface, and as you sit in the discomfort of that feeling and you just are in it, it starts to dissipate and it starts to lose its strength and it starts to lose its hold on you. So there's a concept that I like to talk about when it comes to these feelings. And I'm not just talking about in half pigeon. These are feelings that could bubble up anytime, any day. You might just be in a bad mood. Well, instead of trying to avoid that bad mood, or instead of trying to distract yourself from that bad mood, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, or you're not hurting yourself, you're not being disrespectful, you're not, taking it out on other people, just sit in this bad mood. What is this bad mood? Why do I feel this bad mood? What am I feeling in this bad mood? What am I thinking in this bad? And this might be a good time to bring out that journal. And for me, I've done this before by like curling up with a blanket and sitting on the couch and being like, I'm just going to sit in this bad mood. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to let it work itself through, work itself up, and I'm just going to let it out. I'm going to just let it feel, and that's really hard. It's really hard to sit in the discomfort because it's uncomfortable and you're going to want to be like, nope, ice cream. Nope, social media. Well, no, let's not shove it down because, like I said, there is this, it's a cute like saying, and it's not mine. It came from somewhere else, but it's the monster in the basement. So that bad mood or those feelings or those emotions, imagine that they were like this tiny little monster and you were like, yeah, no, not dealing with you. And you just shoved it down in the basement and closed the door. Well, that monster's growing and growing and comes back up and knocks on the door. And it's like a little toddler monster. You're like, yeah, nope, not today. Don't got time for that. And you close the door and the monster's growing. And the monster's growing and knocks on the door. And now it's like a teenage monster, terrifying. And you open the door and you're like, oh, definitely not today. Nope, close the door. That monster is growing and it doesn't stop growing. So anytime that monster comes and knocks on the door, you open that door. It's your opportunity to face the monster. And what did I say? In order to heal, you need to feel. You need to look at it. I know that's hard. I know that is not what you want to hear. Or maybe it is. Maybe it's what you need to hear. But I know when I heard that, I was like, oh, oof, you need to look at it. So whatever it is, it could be the trauma. It could be the traumatic event. It could be the stress. It could be the loss. It could be the grief. It could be the hardship. Whatever it is, whenever that monster comes and knocks on your door, you have the strength. And maybe you need to set up your environment. And maybe you need to set up your relationships around you. And when I started doing my trauma work, I talked about it. I said, this is what I'm doing. And this is probably what I'm going to want to talk about for a little while. And my friends and my family were very supportive. And I'm very fortunate for that. If you feel that there are people in your life that may not be supportive, maybe now is not the right time to speak with them about this journey. Or maybe it is, and maybe it's a time to set that kind of a boundary of like, is this something we talk about or not? But I would definitely not hide your monster. And this is really hard to take in sometimes. And again, that's where a therapist can really come into play. They can help you face the monster. If it scares you and you're like, I don't want to face it, I don't know how to face it, I don't know if I have the tools to face it, or if it's so intense and so scary, that's where you can get support. You can seek support. So if you want to release this grip, if you want to release the tension, the emotional tension, the monster, you want to let all of that go and you want to heal from it, you need to look at it and you need to feel it. You need to let it work its way through you. And the best way you can do this is by letting the tears flow. So crying and emoting and grieving is the healthiest way and the most powerful way to work that emotion out and to kind of dissolve that emotion. And I'm not someone that cries easily. I rarely cry, and that's probably like a trauma response. But there was a time where I knew it. I just knew I had so much anger. And I'm like, what is underneath this anger? It's pain. And I did my own like little self-therapy session to like ask myself, like, why do I feel the pain? Whose pain am I feeling? And I really got down into like this inner child, this little girl, my childhood. And I felt that pain for her, and I grieved and I cried for her. Really, I was grieving and crying for me and for my childhood that I had separated myself from so much because I didn't want to look at it. But I looked at it and I felt it, and now I feel connected with myself. So there are a lot of ways that you can do this. You can do your self-therapy. You can read books. This is my entire life story. And these are all of the lessons and all the tools that I used in my trauma healing journey in a step-by-step basis. So I can walk you through that journey. There are other books like CPTSD From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. That is an amazing book when it comes to learning even more about CPTSD. I actually have it listed in the resources of this book. I've got several resources like other books, YouTube videos, just a lot of things that you can take to enhance your trauma healing journey, things that worked for me. You can also seek out therapy like EMDR or trauma therapy. And really, honestly, any therapeutic support to start can be immensely helpful. My first therapist that I was with for 5 years was a social worker, and he was enlightening. I mean, the work I did with him was enlightening. And I'm so grateful for that time that I spent doing that work. Another thing that you can do and look into for this healing and for seeing the monster, for facing the monster, would be to look into plant medicine. I'm not recommending that you go and do anything illegal or like recreational drugs. I'm referring to a clinical setting. There are a lot of clinical ketamine clinics out there. There are clinical trials that you can look up to see if there are any clinical trials near you. There's also plant medicine churches that you can look up. You can look up like ayahuasca retreat center near me, and just make sure that all these are totally legal and above board. But plant medicine has been a huge part of my healing journey, and it has allowed me to face my monsters and feel like remove that default mode network where I have all of that fear and that self-talk and that anxiety as I go in to face them. I feel like I can see it and it doesn't hurt me, if that makes any sense. I talk a lot more about plant medicine. I talk a lot more about my experience with ketamine and with microdosing over on my Instagram channel. So if that is something that you are interested in, or if you do have questions for me about that, I'm no expert. I can only speak from my own experience. I'm more than happy to talk about it over there. Okay, so let's recap these 3 tools. The first one is to learn how to ground down. The second one is to change your patterns, to change your life. And the third one is to look at it. In order to heal, you need to feel. Learn how to sit in the discomfort. So you can learn all of these in depth and much more in my book, Trauma Alchemy. And I also have a 8-week yoga calendar that you can pair with the book, because each week of the calendar is paired with a chapter from the book. Each week is aligned with the chapter so that you can do your inner work and process that technique and those lessons from that chapter in your yoga practice. So you're using your yoga to integrate your trauma healing. And I always say your yoga mat, especially your yoga mat at home, is your safe space to practice your self-care, to do your inner work, to heal. The trauma calendar is only available inside the SarahBethYoga membership and app. But if you do buy the book, if you have bought the book, if you're looking to buy the book, please, please, please send your book receipt to book@SarahBethYoga.com. And you'll get some special bonuses, including a 25% off discount code to either the monthly or the annual membership of the SarahBethYoga app, so that you can practice the trauma calendar with us or on your own while you read the book. Now, we never offer monthly memberships, but this is one of those times where I just feel this is important, and I would love for you to join us, whichever way works best for you. Before I end here, let's talk about that giveaway. So I am going to personalize and sign 3 copies of my book, Trauma Alchemy, and mail them out to 3 people, well, 1 each, on my book wait list. So everyone who signed up for my book wait list prior to today, you were all eligible, and Paige used a random number generator to find our winners. And our winners are, first one is Yvette. So Yvette, your email address begins with Yvette. I won't say the whole thing. The second one is Entokozo. Entokozo, your email address begins with, I think it's Kwaben, Qwaben. And then Sarah is our third, and her email address begins with Art Speaks. So congratulations to Yvette and Entokozo and Sarah. And Paige will reach out to you. She will email you to get your logistics so that I can sign and send you your copy of Trauma Alchemy. Now, everyone else, thank you so much for your support. This book is my life story, and it's my most important work. So I cannot wait to hear from you on what parts resonated with you the most. And I would also love to hear from you in the comments today with what lesson resonated with you the most. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Namaste.